Folks, good evening. This is Justice After Dark. Tonight we're going to talk about corruption. A couple different types, but we're going to focus on a type called a political character assassination. So what is a character assassination? This is what they use when the truth isn't on their side. It's political warfare, only without a gun, but it's just as deadly because they try to destroy your credibility using your fellow officers, the information and knowledge they have access to. They will use city council members. They will use the newspaper. They will use county commissioners. They will use the district attorney. And they will use judges to try to undermine you. And they will try to take you out, even if it means destroying your career. I was a highly decorated officer. I was on the SWAT team for 12 years. I commanded it for 4. I was a certified explosive breacher. I went to SWAT school in Baltimore County, Maryland. That's where I was certified as a SWAT officer. I was a public information officer, a master public information officer, meaning that I was certified to speak to the press. But what they feared was my IQ, because most police officers operate around 100, but I operate about around 130. And they feared those things that they could not understand. And I was able to understand things that they could never wrap their minds around. And unfortunately for me, on the night of January 12, 2014, was a night I'll never forget. It was the beginning of the end of my career. It's what happened that night that they would use to crucify me in the court of public opinion. You see, on January 12, 2014, a Williamsport police officer, who I called a cowboy, was paralleling a pursuit that was over a mile away. Paralleling a pursuit is a violation of our rules and regulations. And what made this situation even sadder was the fact that the pursuit that was occurring about a mile north of this officer's location was over 1 minute before this officer caused a fatal accident that caused a young man to burn alive inside a fiery inferno that was his vehicle. But this man was not just any man. This man was a man that I had seen just a week or two prior at the Weiss Market in the freezer section. He had his headphones on and he was dancing in the aisle. He was a man who obviously loved his job at Weiss Market. But on January 12, 2014, on his way to work, he did what he did every night on his way to work. He was minding his own business, driving his vehicle in a lawful manner, when a rogue police officer driving 101 miles an hour, a cowboy, attempted to pass 3 vehicles in the opposing lane of travel. The third vehicle in line in front of the officer was the individual I just described to you. And he couldn't hear the siren of the police car because the siren was a block behind the car because he was outrunning his siren. Because at a certain speed, sound lags. And the sound of that siren was way behind the police vehicle. So the individual in that car that night did not have a clue of what was about to happen. In the moments that ensued, the individual used his left turn signal to make a left turn onto Railway Street in the city of Williamsport, at which time the police officer realized that he was not going to be able to stop, but he tapped his brakes, which slowed him down to 89 miles an hour. He clipped the rear end of that man's vehicle, which caused his vehicle to go into a 360 tailspin, sheared off a telephone pole, which fell to the ground, along with arcing electrical wires, ruptured the gas tank in that vehicle, which continued to spin until it rested against a neighboring building, at which time the electrical wires ignited the gasoline that was leaked from the vehicle, which followed a trail and then engulfed the vehicle in flames. Being that I was the head of the Criminal Investigation Division, I responded to the scene. And when I got there, I saw something that I'd never seen before. Something that looked like scenes from a war. It looked like a bomb or missile had just been deployed and had struck this intersection. There was pieces of plastic, pieces of fiberglass, pieces of glass, pieces of rubber, and the odor of burning flesh in the air. It took about 25 minutes for the fire department to get the fire out because the fire was so hot because of the gasoline, which is an accelerant, in the gas tank of the vehicle. And when I got there, I saw a bunch of police officers wandering around like zombies, not having a clue what to do. Because when the call came over the radio that there was an accident on East 3rd Street and Railway, everybody assumed that it was the police officer whose car was on fire because of the frantic call that came over the police radio from the officer involved. And when the fire got put out, folks, I walked up to the vehicle because I didn't want the other people to see what I knew was going to be inside that vehicle. Even though I knew what I was going to see, I did it anyways because somebody had to. We opened up the door, and what I saw inside that vehicle was a man who I recognized as the man in the aisle at the grocery store a month and a half or a week and a half prior, a week to 2 weeks. And what I saw was a man who had the death grip on the steering wheel and the look of sheer terror on his face. And within a matter of seconds, I watched the skin and the flesh on his face slide right off. And the only thing that was left was the skeleton holding the wheel. There were no more eyeballs. There was no more lips. There was no more ears. It had slid right off his skeleton, right in front of my eyes. And then as I started to look down, I saw the body fat melting very quickly. I saw his intestines and his stomach contents laying where his flesh would have covered those organs. And then as I looked down to his legs, I saw the fat on his legs melt clean down to the bone. What just seconds earlier was a man that I recognized from the grocery store a week or two prior was now just a skeleton. And no matter what I tried to do, I couldn't shake it. I could not get that image out of my head. I never met this man. I only saw him in the grocery store. But in that moment, what I recognized was that could have been my wife. That could have been my daughter. That could have been my son. That could have been your wife, your husband, your daughter, your son. What would you want the police to do if the situation that I just described occurred to your loved one? How dare the Assistant Chief of Police, who's in charge of the Criminal Investigation Division at the Williamsport Police Department, call in the Pennsylvania State Police to investigate an accident involving one of their officers? You see, the decision wasn't popular because they can't sweep it under the carpet if they're not in control of it. And I had to make the call, and the right call was to call the Pennsylvania State Police to investigate this terrible accident, because I didn't want the impropriety on my shoulders. And because of what I saw that night, I was later diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And that diagnosis, folks, would become a scalpel that was used to cut me over and over and over again as part of a political character assassination. But before I get into more details, I want to do what I do and play a song that I wrote for these police officers out there today. And I'm going to tell you that there's 3 types. And as I explain each type, you're going to very quickly be able to realize that you're going to put a face to every one of these types that I explained to you. The first type are the Napoleon types. They're those little short fuckers that walk up to your car with an attitude and a chip on their shoulder. Why? Because they probably got beat up in high school and somebody probably took their lunch money and stole their milk. And it's your fault. And they're going to take it out on you. Why? Because of that tin on their chest. Because they can. And they will. And they do. Luckily, they only make up 10% of every police department in the United States of America. The second type is what we call the blue-collar police officers. Fortunately for us, they make up 80% of every police department in the United States of America. They're the ones who, when they raise their right hand and take the oath, they really believe every word that they repeat, and they remember it for their entire career. They really believe that they're going out to make a difference. They have the greatest of intentions, and that's a majority of our police. They make up 80%. And the last and remaining type are the guys like me, the legacy officers. This here was my daddy, and this candle burns by his picture every day. Because my father died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at 53 years old. I'm age 50, folks. I'm what they call a legacy cop. A blue blood, because blue was in my blood. You see, because when my daddy was a policeman and I was a little boy, when my daddy wasn't home, I tried on his patent leather shoes that he wore. That was his trademark. I tried on his bulletproof vest to see what it felt like, because I wanted to be just like him. And guys like me that came up in the system, we know the rule book, we know the law book, and our daddies taught us the politics, the do's and the don'ts and the ins and the outs. And guys like me could be your best friend or your worst fucking nightmare. And guess what I was? To those who abused their power, I was their worst fucking nightmare. And before I explain what my brothers in blue did to me, I gotta play this song for you that I wrote for them.
You know that. You're all a bunch of fucking assholes. You know why? You don't have the guts to be what you want to be. You need people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
Let me give you a history lesson, but first let's start with a confession. When I was little, I put my feet in his shoes. I became a legacy cop, baptized in blue. I wanted to be like him since I was 8. Blue was in my blood, so it was my fate. I was intrigued by that shield on his chest. I even tried on his bulletproof vest. I used to run to the window when he jumped up and left. Someone called for help, so he had to serve and protect. He was old school and did the job right. He didn't walk around with his asshole all tight. He understood what the badge meant. It was under whose authority he was to represent. The badge is a reminder to go forth and do good deeds. It was never meant to represent power or greed. I hide the tears streaming from my eyes. Let me enter this code and send this missile in the sky. Mr. Officer, your job is to prevent crime and disorder. The power you yield comes from public approval, not the paternal fucking order. I'm a legacy, took the same path as my dad. Lived half my life under the weight of the badge. I've seen it all in my 20 plus years. Lived every day facing constant fear. We took an oath to protect and serve. Put our heart and soul into those 2 words. Went to work every day willing to die. We walked a straight line that was razor fine. How quick y'all forget the badge ain't about you. Quick to judge a man without walking in his shoes. It only takes one bad cop to spoil the whole bunch. I made a career out of eating them fuckers for lunch. Your badge represents the trust of the people. Lately it's become the license to be lethal. You need to go back and revisit your oath. It's not a pair of pants you can just outgrow. I hide the tears streaming from my eyes. Let me enter this code and send this missile in the sky. Mr. Officer, your job is to prevent crime and disorder. The power you yield comes from public approval, not the paternal fucking order. Badge is like respect, it's not given, it's earned. You can't treat your oath like a newspaper you read and burn. For 21 years I was one of you. Most of you cowboys didn't have a fucking clue. Join that little boys club and start paying them dues. That's when your soul no longer belongs to you. They all want to be lions, but most of them are sheep. Mr. Officer, remember your oath, cause talk is cheap. You think you can erase a bad deed with milk and cookies? Some of y'all got 20 years but still act like rookies.
Folks, I wrote that song as a reminder of what it means to raise your right hand and take an oath. We didn't raise our right hand and take an oath to a politician. We didn't. Our oath was to you, the people. I understood that. Because my daddy taught me better, that's why. My daddy was one of the best to ever do it. And so was I. So what happened? Well, what happened was there was a city council member. In fact, he was a city council president who was running for mayor. And he knew that I had information that could hurt him in his election. And what he did was he approached me and tried to get me to bite from the apple. That's usually the first thing these political folks try to do. They try to suck you in and get you to play on their team. Why? Who's out there working the streets late at night? Who knows everybody's secrets? Now, not every cop is as vigilant as I was. But I knew who was snorting cocaine. I knew who was picking up prostitutes. I knew who was accepting cash over responsibility. What do I mean by that? Well, you see, I wrote a rental ordinance in the city of Williamsport to hold landlords accountable because over 60% of the city of Williamsport was rental properties. And a lot of these rental properties were owned by landlords who didn't give a shit who they were renting to. And we had a drug problem. And I discovered the drug problem was directly related to our rental problem. So because our city solicitor, who was an attorney, was a piece of shit, I wrote the city ordinance. Folks, I wrote a fucking law to address the problem. Why? Because I could. And I did. The problem was, what I learned is a majority of people that own these rental properties belong to holding companies, which are fictitious names of a bunch of people who pull their resources together. And a lot of these people were political folks that belonged to these holding companies. That's right. Our local politicians owned a good portion of the 60% of rental properties that were renting to drug dealers, taking that cash over their responsibility to their citizens and their communities. And I knew about it. How did I know about it? Because I wrote the fucking law. And the first property that was shut down under my rental ordinance happened to be a friend of a county commissioner. A county commissioner who thought that it was okay to march into my fucking office and tell me that I was fucking with business people. And that it would be in my best interest to lay low, because when the political shit starts to fly, I didn't need any of it sticking to me. Are you fucking kidding me? Because I'm not kidding you. That happened. That's a fact. That's the truth. And shortly after that, I was warned by a political operative by the name of Jason, who worked for a very powerful man in the area by the name of John Moran. And this man was a lobbyist for people like the governor of the state of Pennsylvania. And he told me that the political folks in Williamsport were going to try to make me look crazy. So think about it, folks. They were going to try to make me look crazy. What did they know about me? How did they know this about me? Well, what they knew about me was that I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. How did they know? Because that fraternal order of police, that brotherhood, that you pay dues to, like you do in college, you pay dues to a fraternity. They're supposed to be like-minded individuals. They're supposed to be your friends, right? You pay for your friends. No. They were the sharks that swam in the fish tank that was called City Hall. And City Hall is where the mayor's office would be, where these city council idiots would be, where the newspaper reporters would be wandering the halls, aimlessly lost, looking to trip over a story to sell some newspapers. And it was a one-stop shop for gossip. But it didn't end at City Hall. In fact, this county commissioner that approached me and threatened me, because that's what it was a political threat. He basically told me that I needed to lay low, which meant stop doing my fucking job. And that the political shit was going to fly. So what was the political shit that was going to fly that he was talking about? Folks, that was 42 newspaper articles printed with my name on them, including one the day after we shut down the first property under the rental ordinance. And the headlines in the newspaper the next day stated, "Police take civilians on Coach raid." The police did not take no civilians on a fucking raid. What the police did was raided the house with a SWAT team, took the bad people into custody, and took them to jail. And then we proceeded to gather a bunch of citizens who were sick and tired of these absentee landlords renting their rental properties to drug dealers, placing their neighborhoods in grave danger, and they were sick and fucking tired of it. And they marched down the street with us because Sir Robert Peel, the founder of modern policing in America, stated that the police are the public and the public are the police. And we marched up on the front steps of that apartment building and we put a placard on that door that this house was identified as a drug nuisance. But there was a problem. This house, this apartment, was owned by a political contributor to this county commissioner. Houston, we have a fucking problem. Within weeks of that threat, I was approached by that city council president who I told you about, who was running for mayor, and told me I was on his short list of candidates to be his chief of police should he be elected mayor. My response to him was, offer to the union president. I don't need the job, nor do I want it. He seems to have all the answers. Let him fix it. That's exactly what I said. In fact, I have the message screenshotted. I have most everything screenshotted because I was great at my job. And they knew it. So why did this city councilman approach me about becoming his chief of police? Because he was being accused of rape. And this rape allegedly started at a local bar called Ann's Tavern. And the allegation was that he put a pill in her drink and then proceeded to take her home after she was roofied, and he violated her. Even though they had had a relationship, he was married, it was inappropriate, but that's his business. But she ended it, folks, with a protection from abuse order, which he violated. You see, I got a phone call from the victim as the head of the Criminal Investigation Division, and I had to send 2 detectives over to the victim's house to pick up her cell phone because there was evidence on the cell phone there was a violation of the Protection from Abuse Order. And that violation was a picture that I will never forget. It was our city council president naked in the shower with his erect penis. That's right, folks. That happened. That's the truth. That's a fact. But here's why I was dangerous to him. Because my brother was the bartender at that tavern where that alleged rape began. And see, my brother fucked up and admitted to me that he snorted cocaine off the bar with the city council president, and that he sold pills to the city council president. And I made my brother go to the state police and tell them every fucking thing he knew. Because you weren't embarrassing this family. And my brother went and he told them everything they knew, that he knew. And that did not sit well with that city council president. And that city council president would call me on the phone and invite me to a Dunkin' Donuts, as a matter of fact, in Hughesville, Pennsylvania. And at that Dunkin' Donuts, he proceeded to tell me that if I wasn't careful, I'd end up like Tom Ungard, because Dirty politicians get rid of people who know too much. Dirty politicians get rid of people who know too much. So who was Tom Ungard and what did that threat mean? Tom Ungard was a police officer, a very damn good one, in the city of Williamsport, who was the head of the Lycoming County Drug Task Force. And we did a raid. I was there. We seized a large amount of cash, a bunch of nice vehicles, Corvettes, trucks, F-150s, you name it. And inside that house was a black book. And in that black book was a list of clients. And in that list of clients was some very powerful people. Some very powerful people. Attorneys, politicians, you name it. Car dealership owners, you name it. Their names are in the black book. But what Tom Ungard did was he spoke to the newspaper and said that when the names are released, it's going to send shockwaves through the community. And that statement struck such fear in the political powers that be that they called their friends at the Attorney General's office and an investigation was immediately launched. And within weeks, Tom Ungard was under suspension because he was under investigation. He would be charged with an ungodly amount of charges and convicted of some minor, minuscule bullshit. It was nothing but a political hit job. And I was going to end up just like him because I knew too much too. So this thin blue line that we talk about, that you see all these t-shirts and all these mugs and everybody thinks you're supporting the police, let me tell you what you're supporting. You're supporting the wall of silence because that's what the thin blue line is. It's a wall of silence. And those who back that thin blue line support the wall of silence. So when you have a rogue officer that fucks up the way this officer fucked up on January 12th of 2014, you're not allowed to tell the truth. You have to stay behind the wall, keep the truth behind the wall, and block it from the public view. And I was not willing to do that. So there was a Facebook page created called Is Gabe Campana an Awful Mayor? And on that page, it was a one-stop shop for gossip, innuendos, and rumors. And all these political people that I just mentioned were all on this page. Some under their real names, some under pseudonames, some used fucking avatars. But I knew who every single one of them was. And lo and behold, I get contacted one night by a friend that says, "You're not going to believe what was just posted on that page. Somebody found your medical file on the floor of Sheet's bathroom." Are you fucking kidding me? The union, the Fraternal Order of Police that I paid dues to, just leaked my PTSD diagnosis. Not only to Facebook, they sent a copy to the city council, they sent a copy to the newspaper, every media outlet within 60 miles, including the city of Sunbury, who was courting me to be their next chief of police. They didn't want to just assassinate my character. They wanted to assassinate my fucking career. So why was the FOP mad at me? Well, I must have had dirt on them too, huh? Well, you see, the president of the Fraternal Order of Police's son applied for a position with the Williamsport Police Department. And we have this thing in our process called a polygraph, which is a lie detector. You don't pass the lie detector, you don't get hired. His son didn't pass the lie detector. Not once, but twice. So why the fuck was he given special treatment? If he failed it once, why was he given a second chance? That wasn't my call. If it was, he would have only got one. And he stormed out of that second polygraph because he didn't like the line of questioning regarding taking of some things that weren't his. But then again, his father drove around in a police car and dumpster dove on duty on a regular basis. And would scrap metal, wood, and anything that anybody threw out. He was a junker. He was a junk policeman, and he was a junk junker. That's just what he was. He was a fucking Napoleon. He was about 4 foot tall, had a chip on his shoulder, and everybody was always picking on him. He filed maybe 5 lawsuits against the city. He got $30,000 a pop, hush money, shut the fuck up and go away, you little troll. And he lost a couple, including the one he filed against me, of course. Folks, what the union did to me was inexplainable. It was infuriating. And it's the reason I do not support the thin blue line. Because the thin blue line is really a militaristic thought process. In fact, it came from the Crimean War. It was a thin red line, not a blue one. But it became commercialized. And it was supposed to be a symbol of honor. But what it's become is a symbol of shame. And you see all these cops out here and all these people buying all this shit. Yeti tumblers for coffee, t-shirts, flags, you name it, they're buying it. And they have no idea what that thin blue line means. They think it means we're backing the good officers. The fuck you are. The fuck you are. What you're telling them is it's okay to protect your buddies. It's okay to silence the truth. It's okay to arrest innocent men for crimes they didn't commit. Because you didn't like them. That's what you're telling them when you buy this thin blue line garbage. You never saw this guy wearing anything with a thin blue line on it. The closest thing you will ever see is my president over there with the red, white, and blue. That's as close as I'll allow in my house. Because I lost all respect for the Fraternal Order of Police in the thin blue line. So you back the blue? Good for you. So do I. But the next time that you speak to an officer wearing a badge, carrying a gun, you better make damn sure that that officer you speak to understands what that oath meant when he raised his right hand and said, I do, and who he swore his allegiance to. Because most of them don't have a fucking clue. They forget that oath the minute they sign the paper, and the ink isn't even dry on their signature before it's forgotten. Most of them don't even know what the badge means or what it stands for. So I will tell you so that you understand. What that badge is very similar to a coat of arms. On that badge is the seal of the state of Pennsylvania, or the state of Georgia, or the state of Tennessee. And then above that is the municipality, or the agency, or the borough, the township, the sheriff's department, whatever it may be. And that is under whose authority you are to go forth and do good deeds, similar to the knights of medieval time, when they held up their shields and the coat of arms was on there. It was under whose authority they were to go forth and do good deeds. And you see, they had the code of chivalry. We have the code of ethics. Or do we? Or do we? You see, it would get so bad in Williamsport, I would go to Sunbury, Pennsylvania, and take that chief of police job. And one of those council members, one of those supporters of that alleged rapist, would make sure that the city of Sunbury's newspaper got a copy of my PTSD diagnosis so that they could try to destroy my career in Sunbury before it ever got started. And see, while I was in the city of Sunbury, I opened up a cold case homicide that was 28 years old. One of only a handful of wood chipper murder cases in the history of the United States of America. And in that case, this guy right here locked himself in a room for 6 weeks, reading over probably 60,000 pages of investigative materials. And at the end of that 6 weeks, I came out of the room and I looked at one of the officers who was helping me with the case and I said, "Let's go. We're going to get her." He was flabbergasted. "What do you mean we're going to get her?" I said, "I know where she's at. We're going to get her." So I drove my ass over to 751 North Front Street in Milton, Pennsylvania. And I wanted to look at this property. Because the bad guy had a problem. He was a sociopath and he liked to talk. And he liked to tell people that he had to go check on his old lady, and he would drive by this house at 751 North Front Street in Milton. And at the time of Barbara Miller's disappearance, this house was owned by the president judge in Northumberland County, which is where Sunbury is located. And there was numerous narcotics investigations being run out of that house. And lo and behold, the people who were being arrested out of that house for selling and buying cocaine, the judge that owned the fucking house was presiding over their trials and their cases. Sound like corruption to you? And then the coup de grace was, I discovered through my investigation that in 2009 there was a meeting between a district attorney, and that district attorney told the police under no certain terms would they ever search that judge's house. Really? Really? Well, guess what? The police did search that house at 751 North Front Street in Milton. This fucking guy right here did it. And I looked straight in the news camera, just like I'm looking into this one. And I said, I'll tear the walls out of that house. Because what would you do if your daughter was missing for 28 years and you believed she was there? You see, I had 8 different cadaver dogs alert to the presence of human remains in the basement walls of that house. And there had been rumors, whispers in the community for 2 decades that this ex-Sunbury police detective put this woman through a wood chipper. He killed her first, of course. I found the crime scene. I know exactly where the crime happened. It happened in the hallway, between the kitchen and the floor. In the doorway. And then he drug her down a step, and her head hit every step going down in the basement. How do I know that? Because there were chunks of her hair on every fucking step going down in the basement. There was blood on damn near every stair tread going down into the basement, which I saw on a Polaroid photo from 2009 when a county detective for the DA's office took a dog in there, and the dog alerted to the presence of human remains inside the residence. But he said that it was sewer pipes that the dog alerted on. I don't think it was. I think she was killed at that location 28 years prior. Would have been, I don't know, 19 years prior or whatever, in 2009 when this officer went there. But he took some Polaroid photos. And these eyes were able to see in that Polaroid photo what looked like blood. That Barney Fife missed it. I did not. I called in the state police forensic lab, collected it, and I found the blood of a male and a female. She fought for her life, folks. She fought for her life. So 8 cadaver dogs alert to the presence of human remains. I was looking for one dog to tell me a reason not to go. Just one. Couldn't find one. And then I contacted my alma mater, the University of Tennessee, where I played baseball in college. And I talked to Bill Bass, Dr. Bill Bass, matter of fact, the founder of the Body Farm at the University of Tennessee. And I asked for his help. I said, I've got these giant walls. I think she's in the wall. I need your help. He said, you need Arpad Voss, Dr. Arpad Voss. He was my brightest student. Dr. Bill Bass is a god in the state of Tennessee. He's a god in the world of forensic anthropology. So when he tells me that I need Dr. Arpad Voss on the case, guess who I fucking called? Dr. Arpad Voss, who brought a quantum oscillator that he developed. He spent his whole entire life studying dead fucking bodies. And he arrived in Sunbury, Pennsylvania with his quantum oscillator. And we had tons and tons and tons of concrete and had no idea what to fucking do with it. So we brought in heavy equipment and we broke that concrete into small little pieces. And Dr. Arpad Voss used his quantum oscillator and said, put that piece in that pile. Put that piece in that pile. Put that piece in that pile. And folks, we had narrowed the concrete down into manageable pieces. We only took a couple pieces to Dr. Bill Bass and Dr. Henry Lee. Because I'd also called Dr. Henry Lee on the phone because I needed a forensic scientist. But I needed one that handled a wood chipper murder case. I'd done my homework. I knew who I needed. And for the cost of 2 shoe-fly pies, I got the services of Dr. Henry Lee. Didn't cost Sunbury a nickel. So I would load up some concrete in a trailer, and I took a few pieces to Connecticut. And as I passed Lake Zoar, which is the exact location that a woman by the name of Hella Craft was murdered at, by a man who was an ex-Sudbury Reserve police officer, Sudbury, Connecticut. In the middle of a blizzard, he was seen using a wood chipper in the middle of a blizzard. Dr. Henry Lee and his team were brought in on a case and they found 1/8 of an ounce of human bone in Lake Zoar. But more importantly, they found a fingernail with red nail polish and a tooth. That's all they found. There's not a lot when you put a body through a fucking wood chipper. And they were able to match that red nail polish with nail polish that was on the dresser in the bedroom. And when they went back to the crime scene at the house where Hella and Richard Kraft lived, Dr. Henry Lee used Blue Star blood reagent and found blood all over the bed. And they collected it, and they convicted Richard Kraft of murder on 1/8 of an ounce of human bone, a fingernail with red nail polish, and a piece of a tooth. And in my case, as I was dissecting the wall, I found copious amounts of wood chips in the wall. Why in the fuck would there be wood chips in a wall? And why would this wall be 14 inches thick when it was not a load-bearing wall? And was it a coincidence that this wall was constructed within 3 weeks after Barb Miller's disappearance? I don't believe it was. What are the statistical probabilities that 8 different cadaver dogs are wrong and gave a false alert? But it was Arpad's device, the quantum oscillator, that made the difference. Because without that quantum oscillator, we would have never known what pieces of concrete had evidence within them. You see, I went straight to Bill Bass's house, Dr. Bass, the god from the University of Tennessee Body Farm. Me and my partner, we drove to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, to his house, and we dropped off some concrete. And within 2 days, this little old man called me on the phone and said, "We have a problem." I said, "What?" He said, "We've got a beetle that's called a sarcophagi, which is a flesh fly that feeds on human flesh. I haven't gotten too far, but I wanted to tell you that I found this because it's huge development." Dr. Henry Lee would find hair, blood, and bone fragments in the pieces of concrete that he was looking at, that he sent to a forensic anthropologist at Brigham Young University. But you see, remember that PTSD thing that I told you was spinning in the background? The city of Sunbury would then use PTSD to do the same thing that they did in Williamsport. Apparently, I got way too close to something that I shouldn't have gotten that close to. I was on the verge of not only being able to say definitively that I found Barbara Miller, but finally arresting the dirty cop, the ex-Sunbury police detective who did time for corruption on the job. He had a group of young individuals that were going in and committing burglaries and bringing the proceeds back to him while he sipped coffee in his fucking police car, collecting a paycheck. Folks, I heard the grumblings. I knew it was coming. The character assassination was on the way. The second one. So I had to find a way to get this case out of Sunbury. And I found a back door. In fact, I climbed through the fucking window. Because if you could prove that corruption was afoot, the president judge could kick the case to the Attorney General's office. But little did I know that there was a prosecutor in Northumberland County that I call B.O.B. It had a secret. And the secret was Barb Miller was killed because she knew who killed Ricky Wolf. And Ricky Wolf was B.O.B's brass ring. He convicted 2 innocent men for a murder they had nothing to do with. Nothing at all. They weren't there. But B.O.B knew he had a problem when he tried 2 individuals who actually participated in the murder, but they were acquitted because there was no evidence. So what B.O.B did was he corrupted and polluted the weakest link. He brought in a witness, put him in his office with an investigator or 2, and they laid out the crime scene photos. And they proceeded to browbeat this witness until they told him exactly what he was going to testify to. And he was so scared and intimidated that he agreed to testify even though it was a lie. But the DA's office struck a deal with him. They were going to look the other way. And he was going to get a deal for his part in the Ricky Wolf murder. So he testifies, and the jury finds these 2 men who weren't even present at the crime scene guilty of murder. And they sat in prison for 17 years, 17 years, for a murder they had nothing to do with. And you see, in my investigation of Barbara Miller, I believe that I identified who actually killed Ricky Wolf. And he's still walking the streets. Barb Miller's killer, plural, are both walking the street. And I believe that Ricky Wolf's true killer, the one who swung the bat that split his skull, is still walking the street. And I believe that the same person that killed Ricky Wolf helped kill Barb Miller. I had to go, folks. I was too close. I was too close to unraveling a 28-year mystery that involved something so deep and so corrupt. And I solved it. And that thing that was so deep and so corrupt was this person called B.O.B. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish out this show here with a song that I wrote that memorializes this corruption. And I want you to listen close to the words, folks. I'm going to sign off before I play this song. This is the last thing I want you to hear before I go. But this is a song I wrote about the murder of Ricky Wolf and this man named B.O.B. I need you to listen to every word. And I need you to think about what I'm telling you.
Yeah, this ain't just a story, it's a stain on the soul of a small town. Ricky's gone, but the truth still buried. This is justice after dark. Let's pull back that curtain. Who killed Ricky? Was it Deputy Hedge or a shadow in the hall of justice, pushing folks off the edge? 2 men convicted, throwing cold under the gavel, while the real killer vanished like smoke through the gravel. No murder weapon, no fingerprints, no witness with a spine. Just a lawyer named Bob, crossing every fucking line. Took a shaky witness, polluted the entire stream, coached him on every word, turning the truth into a scheme. Why so many theories, but not a single fucking shred? Tried the wrong men, while the real ones fled. This town whispers at night, when the lights go low. Who killed Ricky? Does Bob even know? He stacked cold cases like bricks on a wall. Time stopped on his watch. Injustice took a fall. Oh, Bob the prosecutor, he's as dirty as they come. More loyal to his stats than the beat of a drum. Convictions over truth. He was playing God in court while the innocent rotted. He manipulated his report, falsified the facts, and twisted every plea. Locked up his secret and threw away the fucking key. Why so many theories, but not a single fucking shred? Tried the wrong men, while the real ones fled. This town whispers at night, when the lights go low. Who killed Ricky? Does Bob even know? Now they say fear swept through like a storm. Mothers locking doors, fathers praying for reform. But nothing changes when the road hides a crook. And every open case is just another closed book. Behind every cold file's a name and a face. Behind every lie's a courtroom disgrace. This ain't about vengeance, it's about what is right. Exposing the truth when it hides from the light. I search under robes and beneath polished floors. I listen to the silence behind every locked door. Justice after dark, yeah, I'm on the hunt. Pulling the mask off them snakes that put up a front. Who killed Ricky was a deputy head. Ain't no peace till we pull the truth from the ledge. Bob's empire built on a scaffold of lies. Time to bring it down and let the truth rise.
Folks, this is Justice After Dark, aka the Chief, and I'm out.